Today we have the opportunity and the honor to speak with one of the great percussionists of the world, Dame Evelyn Glennie. Welcome to our show. What do you think is the main purpose of the music in the world today?
It's a very large question to answer. And I think the role of music actually changes as we progress through life, but there's no doubt about it that music really is a form of medicine, actually, whether we participate in music or whether we choose to listen to music, and that in a way is a form of participation. But when you see the discovery and the curiosity and the openness that children have in making sound, and we have to ask ourselves, well, what is the role of a musician? A musician is basically a sound creator. That's what a musician is. So in a way, my tools happen to be percussion. Someone else's tools may be a wind instrument or a brass instrument, but basically we are sound creators. We take that sound and we put it into some sort of emotional content. And you know, this is something that we can participate in no matter where we are in the journey of our life, really. So it's never too late to start, but there's no doubt in my mind that really all arts, not just music, is something that we desperately need to feed into our young people, into our education systems, and allow them this discovery, really, that can only happen in a live performance, in a way, you know, that just seeing the essence of something being created by the raw hand, you know, and the imagination sort of taking off at that moment.
What do you want to convey with your music? What do you have to bring to audience?
Well, I don't walk on stage thinking, I want to do this or I want to do that, I want to say this or I want to say that, because in a way the audience is very much part of the performance. So the audience members, every single individual is walking into a room with different emotional baggage. So they're going to view the music differently. You know, if you have 2,000 people in a hall, it's going to be interpreted 2,000 different ways, actually. So, you know, for me, I have to allow myself also to be open. And there are some moments whereby you're on a very personal journey. There are other moments whereby you really do want to share something. But no matter what's going on within yourself, is that the message is honesty. The message is something whereby you know that you're going to be 200% focused on that piece of music. And no matter which piece of music you're playing, for me, you have to see that as being the greatest piece of music ever written. So there isn't a good piece or a bad piece, or one that I like or one that I don't like. If I'm playing that piece, if I'm giving that piece of music to the audience, that is the most important piece of music I will be dealing with at that moment. In the same way that sometimes I'm asked, what's your favourite instrument? Well, if the piece requires a cowbell and a wood block and a tam-tam or a cymbal or whatever, those are my favourite instruments, you know. If I go through thinking, well, I don't like that, but I do like that, then this will really show in your playing and in what you give as a sound giver, really.
When audience hears a technician or a musician that interprets the music, what is then the difference? I mean, we hear it, we all hear it differently, and yet interpretation is very much different than a technical execution of notes.
Well, it's you know, in a way the answer can be very complicated or it can be very simple. And what is complicated, I think, about the word technique is exactly what is technique, you know. Mechanically we can do something by rote, by watching, by practicing over and over again, but we all have our individual sound. We all have our that kind of frequency that we lean towards. For me, I lean towards low-sounding instruments, broad-sounding instruments. I prefer those to higher-sounding instruments because the broad, lower-sounding instruments really do feed the whole body, and it's something that I personally relish in. So I love big bass drums. I love timpani. I love low tam-tams, those types of things. I love low tom-toms, things that have you don't have to do a lot in order for them to just respond, so you can actually allow something to happen and it will just take over. It'll have its own life, really. But technique for me is actually not what is necessarily spent in the practice room, but it's really having that opportunity to perform. We can practice a piece of music, but what's the point in practicing if we don't know how to perform? So there's no difference in practice and performance. So whether you're playing a scale, you need to say something. Is it a happy scale? Is it sad? Is it distant? Is it present? Is it bite? Is it, angry? What is it? What are you saying with that scale? Because music and the execution of music is all about touch, really, and touch is about hearing, it's about listening. So there's no real difference, and in order to deal with the sense of touch, the body has to be completely and utterly resonating, really, and I think possibly that's the most important so-called technique that we have to learn, is to listen to the body. So you can have a Stradivarius or a Steinway there, or the most incredible instrument in front of you, but nothing's going to happen to that instrument unless the human body comes in contact with it. And if that human body isn't resonating and really open to wanting to explore the instrument, then we're not going to get very far with how we want to say something.
You said it's then very dependable on who sits behind the instrument. Where do you get the interpretation that you said?
Well, interpretation in performance it's like walking on a tightrope. And again, this is where the audience play a part, because the audience creates something that never happens when you're literally performing by yourself, in an empty hall. And they're two completely different experiences. One isn't better than the other, but they're just different experiences. And for me, interpretation is all about the moment in time, because something's going to be subtly different the following day. The body is going to be different as we get older, And what I've found is that the sense of time has really changed for me. A lot of the pieces I played maybe 20 years ago, I was rushing. I kind of was always trying to I didn't really appreciate slow tempos. And now I really do, or I feel at least I'm on the track of actually just taking time. And they don't frighten me anymore, and it's a funny thing, and I think that's possibly just literally, age coming in, just a little bit of experience playing a part. I don't know, maybe listening more, to yourself. It's very difficult to put all of this into words.
So life is the teacher then?
Life is a teacher. It probably is, It really is, with all the ups and downs, and that's what playing is about, in the relationship that you have with the instruments. One moment they're your best friends, and the next moment you want to, strangle them. They're really your enemies. So this kind of turbulent emotion that goes through when you're playing an instrument and trying to search for that thing that you desperately want. I think that the challenge in being a percussion player at this point in time, in 2008, is that we do not have the absolute pinnacle of our instruments. We don't have a Stradivarius marimba. We don't have a Steinway vibraphone. These instruments are still developing. So the marimba that I have in my head isn't available yet. You know, it doesn't have the resonance that I feel within myself. I cannot just woof, do what I want completely and utterly openly because of the mechanics of the instrument. So we're still very much developing that, and that's why the players need to work very closely with the instrument manufacturers, and likewise players need to work with composers. So it's almost like a domino effect that we have. Each affects the other.
What would you say is the greatest lesson that life taught you throughout in your musical life as an artist and in a life of your own?
That's another big question. Very difficult for me to just pick something, but really, you know, ultimately, life begins with sound and it ends with sound. That we know. And, you know, for me, the art of listening is something that is something whereby we've always got to cultivate, you know, have every opportunity to try to practice it every day of our lives. And sometimes we fail and sometimes we get it reasonably okay. But, you know, as a musician, you have to spend so much time alone, away from the instruments. So for me, I don't listen to music as a hobby. I don't involve myself at all in music as a hobby. It's of no interest to me, actually, because I'm doing it as a profession. And because I'm doing it as a profession, I need this time to just be alone and have the pieces of music running through my system, so that a lot of the so-called preparation, as it were, is done away from the instruments. That's a very precious moment, and it also allows everything to be magnified in what you do. So the whole giving of what you do, the process physically is magnified when you're literally just sitting there. You know, it really is. And it's a very crucial part, really, certainly in my preparation. But, you know, the next person will be listening all the time to different things. And so each to their own, you know, really each person functions differently, and you know, that I completely respect. But in a way, for me, less is more. I'll hear better if I'm hearing less, if that makes sense.
So how can we listen that we will also hear the essence that you want to express?
Well, I think that's really up to you. I personally don't want to be taking the responsibility of trying to feed you as to how you listen, because your cat may have just died, you know, or you may have suddenly met a beautiful girl or something, and you know, so, I mean, if we just take an example, if we play a Bach chorale or something, which is very moving, But if something really exciting has happened in your life and you're feeling really upbeat, yes, you will say that's a very beautiful chorale. But if something more somber has happened, the loss of a partner, a friend, whatever, then that chorale has a completely different meaning then, sound-wise, and it may have a different type of weight according to your emotion. So we have to respect that with all individuals who come into a concert hall. And all I would say is that please keep an open mind. So for people experiencing, let's say, Veni Veni Emmanuel by James Macmillan, keep an open mind. I know that not everybody is going to so-called enjoy the piece of music. Some might find it too contemporary or too noisy or too this or too that, and some may feel, oof, that said something, I don't know what, but something happened there. Or some may have thought, oh, that was interesting, well, I'd quite like to hear it again, So we all have different ways of opening the musical package, as it were. So, and for me, I can only give what I'm feeling at that moment, and then I've got to let it go. I walk off stage and I have to let it go. I will analyse what I do as a percussionist, as a musician, as a sound creator, and I'll go back to the drawing board. But after that, what's happened here, I have to let go.
Where do you find happiness? Is happiness equal music for you?
It depends then how you want to interpret the word music. Happiness for me isn't always about this, isn't always about a particular piece of music. No, because the journey is too, like that, and I'm too close to it in a way. But I think a lot of pieces that I'm performing now, I appreciate much more than I did many years ago. So I'm happy about that. But really, happiness, I think, is being comfortable with yourself, even in not nice moments. For me, it's about being comfortable with who you are and the type of journey that you're on, knowing that you're always peeping round the next corner. You're always curious enough to ask, well, what if? What if I did this? What if I tried this? I mean, this piece of music, it has been in my life a long time in percussion terms, but always there's something there that I'm thinking, whoa, I want to try this, I want to try that. What would happen if I did this? What would happen if I did that? And I have to have this kind of feeling in order to progress as a musician.
Thank you, Evelyn, for your time and talk. And thank you for your attention.